Yesterday they played. Today we react to the 24-16 loss to the Tennessee Titans in Week 2 of the NFL preseason. That game last night, largely uneventful, very tough to watch if you're a Vikings fan. However, there were a few bright spots. We got to be fair and address both sides. First, the good. Ivan Pace Jr., man. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video on him talking about how the hype is real, believe in it. And even still looking back on that, I think that I still underestimated just how large of an impact that he is going to have in this Brian Flores defense. Wore the green dot last night. The first defensive possession, 3rd and 5, left unblocked. Went after Malik Willis, got a hit on him before the pass went out. Lewis Seen for the cleanup. At this point, with Ivan Pace Jr., it's almost an insult watching him with the twos now. I want to see him with the first team defense in the regular season. At this point, there's nothing else that we need to see from him in the preseason. According to Darren Wolfson, there's a thought that perhaps he either has or will pass Brian Asamoah on the depth chart. That would be insane. But either way, Ivan Pace Jr., he is the real deal. What we are witnessing from this guy right now is absolutely incredible. In the passing game, Tristan Jackson, Nick Muse, they made a couple of plays, so they were not bad. Jaren Hall, next week against Arizona, he needs to play the entire game. That one touchdown drive that they had, a nice combination of usage of his arm and his legs. I want to see more from him because we literally need to see nothing else from Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins is a backup quarterback. There's nothing else to learn about this guy, as in if Kirk goes down and you have to rely on him for a drive or the rest of the game or maybe another game after that, okay, fine. But if Nick Mullins has to be your starting quarterback for the remainder of the season, let's say more than 4 games, then your season is over with. There's nothing else to learn about this guy. Jaren Hall, you see some flashes from him to where, okay, next week against Arizona, play the whole damn game. He's doing well with what he has to work with. I'll talk about the depth of this team. The offensive line didn't do any favors for him. I want to see him with some better playmakers in the passing game just to get an idea of what he's really about. And lastly, actually not lastly, second to last, Ryan Wright might be the best punter in the league. It's amazing. Even when he technically has a bad play, it turns out good because Ryan Wright has a boot for a leg. It's incredible. But I forgot what quarter this was, what point in the game this happened, but he had a bad punt to where when it lifted off his leg, it kind of went straight up into the air instead of a trajectory of moving towards the other side of the field. And I said, oh, this is going to be bad. And it was a short punt. And I said, oh man, that's a bad punt by him. But it turned out it bounced off a Tennessee Titans player and the Vikings recovered it. So even a bad play turns out good for the Vikings by Ryan Wright. It's incredible. And lastly, Ty Chandler, I'm going to say by the 10th game of the regular season, he will take over as the Vikings RB1. He certainly cemented himself as the RB2 behind Alexander Mattison. But the thing is, with Mattison, what you want from the bare minimum from a running back in today's league, Alexander Mattison, he fits that bill perfectly as far as break a couple of tackles, get your 4 yards of carry, pass protection is solid, maybe catch a couple of passes out the backfield, boom. Mattison fits that to a T. Chandler has that, but also has a dynamicness on top of that. There's the big play ability. So let's say I think it's only a matter of time, but if you play fantasy football and you draft Mattison late, make sure you also handcuff Ty Chandler on top of that. I think it's only a matter of time. Ty Chandler, he's going to be the RB1 to finish the 2023 season. And now for the other side. With the exception of the aforementioned players, the Minnesota Vikings can afford literally no more than 0 injuries with their starters. The Vikings have absolutely no depth. I'm not going to bitch and moan about the second team offensive line just because the first team offensive line is bad as far as the interior anyway. Oli Udoh, I will say I'm a little bit disappointed in him because I thought at tackle he was much better than he was at guard, but yesterday gave up back-to-back sacks. That's unacceptable. But again, the first team offensive line has too many question marks to sit here and say, well, the second team offensive line, where's the depth? Where's the starting offensive line? The secondary could have, as bad as it was, could have been so much worse with the amount of drop passes by the Titans receivers last night. Andrew Booth Jr., he whiffed on a tackle on 3rd down. That resulted in a 1st down. Lewis Seen channeled his inner Anthony Barr, getting galloped over like a horse that led to a touchdown. This is a former 1st-round pick, and we're talking about him needing to work on his tackling at the professional level going into year 2. I understand that he missed the last 14 games of last season, and for a lot of people, Lewis Seen gets a lifetime pass. He can do no wrong. Just give him time. How much time are we supposed to give him? Yes, he was hurt last year, but he's healthy right now with no limitations. He's out there playing preseason football. How much time are we going to give this guy before we say something's not right here? That 2022 draft class, it's funny because I think it's unfair, and I don't think this necessarily puts pressure on these two individual players directly, but I think in some ways, maybe from the fans' viewpoint, the worse that this 2022 draft class looks, I think it puts more pressure on guys like a Caleb Evans and Brian Asamoah to make up for the difference. Because it's like, my goodness, Lewis Seen, 2 different defensive coaching staffs have deemed him not fit to be a starter. Ed Ingram, he's a starter, but he's terrible. Andrew Booth Jr., maybe he's a bust. This dude, right now, he's playing with the 2nd team, 3rd team defense. A Caleb Evans, Brian Asamoah, can you please save what's left of this draft class? I think it's unfair. There are only 2 players, and my goodness, it's almost like yin and yang here because as it pertains to Brian Asamoah, if Darren Wolfson is right and Ivan Pace Jr. has leapfrogged him on the depth chart, it's like, oh man, that's great. What an ascension by Ivan Pace Jr. But then it's like, oh man, another one bites the dust from this draft class to where it's like all you have left is a Caleb Evans. Hopefully he can be prime Deion Sanders. Nothing from the linebackers, the defensive line outside of TJ Smith. They didn't make any plays. Big picture here. The depth is non-existent for this Minnesota Vikings team.